Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the most profound and, frankly, most puzzling biological mysteries in modern medicine, the recurrence of malignancy, or cancer, after treatment. We're going to explore exactly why, after successful treatments and seemingly clear scans, cancer sometimes returns. We'll look at the hidden causes, the mechanisms these cells use to survive, and the growing options we have for treatment.
How does cancer return after successful treatment? It's a heavy question, right? But here's the most important thing you need to know right out of the gate. Recurrence is a biological survival tactic used by microscopic cells. It is absolutely not a failure on the patient's part. It's just an incredibly intricate evolutionary mechanism happening on a cellular level. And understanding that mechanism, well, that's our first step to beating it.
Okay, let's dive into the reality of the situation here. The data shows that up to 30% of patients experience cancer recurrence within 5 years of their primary successful treatment. Historically, a lot of these recurrences are caught at advanced stages, which kind of limits the treatment options. This statistic really sets the stakes for us today. It highlights exactly why we need to understand the cellular mechanisms at play so we can outsmart them.
When we talk about recurrence, doctors categorize it geographically into 3 distinct types. First up is local recurrence. That's when the cancer comes back in the exact same spot it started. Then there's regional recurrence, meaning the tumor has grown into the lymph nodes or tissues right near that original site. And finally, distant recurrence, where the cancer has spread to organs far away from where it began, which we also call metastatic cancer. But here's a totally critical fact. Even if it moves somewhere else, like the liver or lungs, it's still treated as the original cancer type. So if it started as colon cancer, it's still colon cancer.
So how on earth do they survive that initial barrage of chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery? Well, the chilling biological reality is they didn't disappear, they just went to sleep. Let's zoom way in on the micro level to investigate the cellular suspects that are actually pulling off this evasion.
Section 1. Hidden culprits, cancer stem cells.
Meet our first group of cellular suspects, cancer stem cells, or CSCs. Now, they make up just a tiny fraction of the whole tumor mass, but they are incredibly specialized. These are the cells responsible for the early formation, the progression, and yes, the recurrence of cancer. They're sneaky too. They hide out in these highly specialized niches deep within the tumor microenvironment. Because of their unique biology, they're often super resistant to conventional drugs and manage to completely dodge our initial waves of therapy.
Let's walk through exactly how this plays out over time. Step 1, these stem cells build up cumulative genetic mutations, which gives them some serious survival traits. Step 2, when treatment starts, they use those specialized niches we just talked about to evade destruction. They essentially sit quietly in a biological bunker while the rest of the tumor gets destroyed. Then, step 3, once the coast is clear, they use a process called asymmetric division. They split into one new stem cell and one regular tumor cell, literally seeding a brand new tumor.
Now, what's really fascinating is how these returning cells compare to the original tumor. When we look at the genomic evolution of, say, breast cancer, we see something wild. When a local relapse happens, the cells usually share the exact same genetics as the primary tumor. They're practically identical. But distant metastases? Oh, they evolve. They pick up totally new driver mutations that weren't in the primary tumor at all, hijacking new cellular pathways like SWI-SNF and ARI1A. It's almost like they downloaded a dangerous new software update to survive in a completely different part of your body.
Section 2. Sleeper agents, tumor dormancy.
That brings us to our second major survival trick. Tumor dormancy is this complex biological state where cancer cells essentially just hit the pause button. They enter a resting state known as the G0/G1 phase of the cell cycle. Why? Because our conventional treatments, like chemo and radiation, are designed to seek and destroy rapidly dividing cells. By simply stopping their growth and chilling out, these sleeper agents turn practically invisible to the drugs. They can survive like this for months or literally decades before waking out. And this brilliantly illustrates the specific triggers in the tumor microenvironment that suddenly jolt these dormant cells awake. For example, hypoxia, which is low oxygen, can protect them. But a sudden rush of reoxygenation, that can wake them up. Inflammation, from things like tobacco smoke, can release cellular traps that trigger division. Oxidative stress can actually cause metabolic reprogramming, changing how the cell burns energy. Even soluble factors can act like chemical messengers that flip on growth pathways. Basically, the environment itself acts as a biological alarm clock.
And if you want to talk about extreme survival, check this out. Under massive stress, like heavy chemotherapy, some cancer cells do something incredibly strange. They undergo a process called meiosis. They actually merge together to create these massive polyploid giant cancer cells. These giant cells then bud off tiny stem cell-like units called Raju cells. I know it sounds like straight-up science fiction, but it just goes to show you exactly how resilient and adaptable these microscopic adversaries really are.
Section 3. The New Detectives, Surveillance and Liquid Biopsy.
But hey, humanity isn't just standing by. We are constantly developing new ways to hunt these surviving cells down. Now, for decades, we've relied on traditional imaging scans, your CTs and MRIs. The catch? Scans need a tumor to be physically large enough to actually see. Enter liquid biopsies. This is an absolute game changer. It analyzes a simple blood draw to look for microscopic molecular footprints of cancer. Because it's hunting for DNA instead of a physical mass, a liquid biopsy can spot a recurrence 6 to 12 months earlier than standard imaging.
The process is super straightforward for the patient, but incredibly advanced behind the scenes. Step 1 is just a standard blood draw. Step 2, the lab analyzes that blood for circulating tumor DNA, or ctDNA. These are tiny fragments of genetic material that cancer cells shed right into the bloodstream. And Step 3, this lets doctors detect minimal residual disease, or MRD. Finding these trace amounts of cancer way before a scan could ever pick them up gives patients a massive, crucial head start.
Now, even with liquid biopsies being so cutting edge, traditional surveillance protocols are still a cornerstone of post-treatment care. Take colorectal cancer survivors, for example. Guidelines recommend reviewing medical history, doing physical exams, and running CEA blood tests every 3 to 6 months. They also suggest annual CT scans of the abdomen and chest for the first 3 years, plus a surveillance colonoscopy at year 1 and then every 5 years after. And of course, secondary prevention, meaning keeping a healthy weight and staying active, is universally recommended to give your body the best possible defense going forward.
Section 4. The counterattack. Options for treatment.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how doctors respond once a recurrence is actually confirmed. The first thing they do is restage the cancer to map out exactly where it is and how far it spread. If you look at a medical chart, you might see a lowercase r added to the front of the stage. This R staging just reflects the current status of the recurrent cancer. It's a handy clinical tool, but don't worry, the original stage you were given at your very first diagnosis never changes in your historical medical records.
If a recurrence is found, please remember, there is a vast arsenal of treatment options out there. Depending on where the cancer has returned and what treatments you've already had, doctors might use surgery to remove local recurrences or bring in chemotherapy or radiation. Biological and targeted therapies are getting more common by the day too. Plus, there are always clinical trials testing completely novel approaches. And let's not forget palliative care, which is entirely focused on symptom management and keeping you comfortable, prioritizing your quality of life. The bottom line here is you have options.
And here is where it all ties together. As we learned a few minutes ago, distant metastatic cells often evolve and pick up new mutations. Because of that, resequencing the DNA of the new tumor is absolutely vital. By doing this, doctors can find new, actionable targets that weren't even there in the original cancer. Discovering a new mutation might open the door to highly specific targeted therapies like JAK2, STAT3 inhibitors, which literally cut off the exact chemical pathways that this newly evolved cancer relies on to survive.
Section 5. Empowerment. Taking back control.
Understanding the biology and all this new technology is incredibly empowering. It shifts the entire narrative from fear right over to strategy. The National Cancer Institute actually frames it perfectly. When cancer comes back, you have the experience to face it that you didn't have before. You're a veteran now. You know the hospital, you know the medical jargon, you know your care team, and most importantly, you know your own strength. That experience is a remarkably powerful tool when navigating a recurrence.
By decoding how cancer stem cells work, understanding tumor dormancy, and tracking genetic evolution, we're building better weapons. Things like liquid biopsies, targeted therapies, and rigorous surveillance are genuinely turning the tide. More and more, modern medicine is transforming cancer from a fatal acute threat into a manageable chronic disease. It's becoming something that patients can live with and actively manage for many, many years.
We are literally standing on the edge of a brand new era in oncology. So with tools like liquid biopsies, catching recurrences months earlier, and our ever-growing ability to target the specific, evolving genomes of metastatic cells, I want to leave you with this one thought. How will the next decade of genomic medicine change what it means to be a cancer survivor? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating explainer with me today. Stay curious, stay informed, and I'll catch you in the next one.